Hello and welcome back. Today we have the first shipment from Fanhom for the Power Rangers Megazord part work. So let's open it up and take a look at what's been received. You can see inside that we get part 1 and part 2 of the Zord. We also receive a welcome leaflet, a typical part work plout, which gives an overview of the part work, and how it will look when it's fully assembled. This thing is going to be huge. I think it's about 2 foot tall when it will be fully complete. Personally, I went with the 12-month option rather than the 24, as I can't wait 2 years to get this thing complete. Then we get issues 1 and 2 of the magazine. Out of the way. Now, I believe all of the magazine covers are the exact same, which is a bit of a disappointment, as it would make it a little harder to look when looking for a specific issue, but it is what it is. These magazines are filler stuff anyway. That'll be mostly instructions, I believe. So part 1 is the pterodactyl chest. It gives us instructions on how to assemble. Gives a reference to first Red Ranger, episode synopsis, and a summary about the universe itself. And issue 2 is the initial head, summary on Zordon, second episode, and some more on what looks like Saban himself. So it looks like the magazines will have some interesting stuff to read, if nothing else. But we're all here for the part work itself. So as we've seen, we've got part 1 and part 2. Part 1 is the chest piece for the main body of the pterodactyl. As you can see here, it is a pretty large piece. I don't think I've got a tape measure or anything. Let's have a look. Unfortunately, I don't have a tape measure to hand, so I can't actually give an estimate of the actual size itself. But as you can see, it is a fairly large piece. Let's get this opened up and assembled as the first part, and we'll see how this goes. Alright, I've turned the camera around so it's easier for me to assemble, so apologies if this is upside down in your viewing. But we're going to open the second part. Let's see what we get. Little pack of screws. Oh, I was expecting this to be plastic, but it's actually metal, which is really good. solid piece of metal. So it looks like the pterodactyl on the main body of her will be made out of metal, which is really, really good. This bit's the ABS plastic, but you would expect it to be, as that's just a back plate which will be hidden by all this. Now we need to look at assembly. We'll need a screwdriver. So the second issue does come with a screwdriver. As you can see, however, I do have some tiny little ones here I can use. So you want to be careful when opening the screws so they don't go everywhere. I don't, but if you have a little pot or something you could put them in, I would recommend that as well. So they just clip together like that, and then we take one of the little screw. Oops. Yep, it's just a Phillips head screwdriver. And screw them in. Very, very simple. If you're not familiar with using screws or anything like that, you want to be careful. You don't want to over tighten them and strip the heads, but equally you don't want them to be too loose, otherwise everything will rattle or it will fall apart. But I suspect if you're watching this you are familiar with screwdrivers. This is just this one still needs quite a bit of tightening. Personally, if you have multiple areas to be screwed in, you're better to only screw each of them in part way until all the screws are in place, and then screw them in evenly so you get a nice even thread. See that, that's about as tight as it's going to go. And I think this is now the same. Yep. So then, based on the instructions, we take the back plate and the rest of the screws go into place on this. So it wants to go in this way up, and you can see here various plugs that just socket in nice and lined up. Then get our screws. So here I would recommend starting in one corner for one screw, doing it part way, then moving to the other corner for the other screw. Sorry if this is teaching you to suck eggs, but if you're not familiar with doing some basic assembly like this, then you just want to have an even base so that things don't rattle around while you're screwing in the rest. Again, you're just going to move around. I tend to, when doing things like this, I always tend to sort of alternate between areas just so that you continue to get an even coverage with the screws. Is that this one's not lining up. Going to open and use the screwdriver provided and see if that does anything different. Not screwing in, so I'm going to come back to that one. Try and get the others in evenly. I'm going to pause this while I finish this one up, and we'll be back in a bit. And there we go. That's part one assembled, which is the will be the pterodactyl. And it's the chest piece of the Megazord. Had to have a couple of issues with a couple of screws. I'm not sure if it's the pegs and the holes not quite lining up or what. But yeah, a couple of them, but the rest went in perfectly fine. Overall, once it's assembled, it feels like a solid piece. Yeah, that's pretty much all that is. Then we have issue 2. So with issue 2. Pegged down, so you want to be careful that things don't go flying out. Get a bunch more tiny screws, and then we get the rest of the part of the head to be assembled. So to begin with, we want, this one's a little more complex than the other bits, and you want to make sure you're also using the right bits for the right point. So I think what I'm going to do is lay these out in numerical order so they don't get mixed up. According to the instructions, this is point 2.1. That little piece is 2.2. No. 2.3. 2.4. 2.5 and 6 of the eyes. It's not really visible, but they are a clearish yellow plastic, so potentially these are going to light up. Hmm. 2.7, which has a bit of cellophane on it to stop it getting mucked up. 7. 2.8. 2.9. Again, a lot of this is metal. 2.10, 11, 12, 13 is the screwdriver, 14, 15 and 16 are the screws, and there are 3 different sizes here, and 17 is our first circuit board LED. So again, you want to be careful when opening the screws. Make sure not to get them mixed up or to lose any of them. They seem to have a spare screw from the Megazord. Here. Should have 3 for 2.14 and 2 for 2.15. So initially we want points 7 and 10. So that's that bit and that bit. Now we'll assemble like like so. They do clip together quite nice and quite tightly. You then want two of the two 16 screws, which are these two black ones. This is going to be fiddly. I could see screws easily dropping or getting lost, so be very, very careful. I have no idea. See? I have no idea what Fanhom's policy is on replacing broken bits, lost screws, etc. Whether they will charge you for another issue or they will send something out. If anyone knows, I'd be happy to find out. And if it's something I do find out and I do a future video on this, I will certainly mention it. That's nice and tightened, and there we have the initial part of the crest. Then we get 2.11, and that should, in theory, just clip in. It does. There'll be another screw, another 2.16, so another one of the black ones to screw in. But again, it's clipped in, it's tight. In theory, you could probably get away without the screw. I wouldn't want to, but in theory, you probably could. This is very fiddly and suffering with the tremors as I do. This is not the easiest thing in the world. So, yeah. Sadly, the screwdriver isn't magnetised, and that's what this really needs to be. So I need to have a look through my other screwdriver and see if I have a tiny magnetised one. It's all tightly put together, and there we have the crest. We'll put that to one side while we take 2.8 and 2.9, which look like, I assume, are going to be part of the neck. Oh, they're probably, no, that's not the neck, that's the headpiece. I can see how this is going to go. But yeah, so they just line in, and then two of the 214s, which are these ones. Make sure this is lined. I don't know if you can see it properly, but this, you just need to make sure it's all lined up together. Now, I understand this, so originally this was launched in France under the, I think the company was Avaline or something like that. And I think this is obviously Fanhom, which is part of Diagnosti or something like that. And now it's seeing a global release. About time. But I supposedly heard that in the US they're only getting digital copies of the magazine. Again, I don't know if that's true or not, but it's interesting if that is the case, and somewhat of a disappointment. Although what someone is going to do with all these magazines afterwards, I couldn't say. There we are, they're all lined up. Now we want the circuit board LED light, and this goes in upside down with one of the very tiny 215 screws. Again, you just need to make sure this is lined up. Nice and tight. This then clips on to here. Oh, that's interesting. You won't be able to see it on the camera, but this piece here is actually opaque. So I'm guessing with the LED light, when it's all wired up, it will shine through. Otherwise, it's a very interesting point to have a LED. Now 2 more of the black screws. Right. So reading the instructions here, there's some of these bits which, let's see what they say. Some parts you receive in this issue won't be used now, but in later stages of assembly. Keep them in a safe place until then. That I find a little annoying. While obviously it's a artwork, you're going to have bits which don't connect to anything early on. You know, example, the pterodactyl chest and the other bits here and there. I do feel that having tiny bits which don't connect to anything straight off the bat is a little annoying, and it makes me wonder why they couldn't be saved for a later issue. I don't know if it has something to do with how much can be included with an assembly stage or not. But yeah, it does seem like it would make more sense to include the bits that you don't need now at a later stage when you do need them, rather than potentially having them stacked somewhere and losing them. But what I will be doing is keeping the box as came in, which is a nice little shoebox shape, and I will be keeping all the bits in there. I will probably wrap these up in some tissue paper or something to stop them from being scratched or damaged while they're in the box. Yes. So here we have the crown all assembled. all fits together really nicely. The final part is the faceplate and the red piece, which just clips all together. I just want to make sure it's up the right way. That just clips in like that. And that is it, and then we're left with all these little bits for later assemblies. See what I mean? There's a lot here that I do feel could and should have been kept for later stages to avoid things getting lost or damaged or anything to that effect. But thank you for joining me on this little journey. I may be back with more, I don't know yet, hopefully. But yeah, I really enjoyed assembling that. I'm looking forward to the rest of this. From the pictures I've seen of people who already have the fully assembled thing, it looks amazing. Really beautiful, giant centerpiece for anyone's collection. So yeah, this will form a centerpiece for my collection. God knows where it's going to go when assembled, but that's future me's problem. Thank you for joining me, and I'll be back soon.